Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? We are live. War Report is here giving y'all a little bit more of that Auburn content. If you are not already liking and subscribing to the YouTube, then you're wrong because our YouTube channel needs to have way more people on there because we know the Auburn family is huge. So go ahead, click like and subscribe. Tell somebody else about it. Let them do the exact same thing. We are the War Report on Instagram and Twitter, and we are also on the TikTok as TW Report. Fellas, how we feeling on this off week?
Relaxed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no stress. No stress.
Yeah, so
So,
we have an off week, of course, and we are waiting to see what's going to play out with these other games today. I'm particularly, of course, going to be looking at Mississippi State this week because that's who we play next week. You know, of course, we've said many times the transitive property is not existent in football, so we don't know what they're going to look like week in and week out. But we can say they have a game today. I want to see what it's going to look like. How
yeah.
are y'all feeling about the other games? We've already talked about them a little bit. I know there's some news. George Pickens not going to be playing today for Georgia, so we'll see how that affects their offense. I do expect that to actually impact them a little bit because he's a reliable receiver that they have. He's not their top receiver this year, but he is a reliable one. Of course, we mentioned kind of in passing about the interesting situation going on in Clemson right now with Trevor Lawrence
Right.
not playing and how that's going to shape up. What are you guys feeling about this Saturday?
You know what? Games of the week, right? Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida, Georgia are really start to shape out the national race this week. So with Trevor Lawrence being out for a second week, I'm interested to see if they lose this game, if the media gives them a pass,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like
actually
how
anticipate that being the case. I saw something talking about how if Notre Dame loses, that pretty much eliminates them from the playoff, but Clemson could
As it
still
should.
lose and they could make it to the playoff.
right, yeah. I
As it
mean,
should.
it's they could still meet though. Look, correct me if I'm wrong. Can they still meet in the ACC championship if they
I'm
lose
not
the game?
sure
I'm
where
not
Notre
sure
Dame
where
is
Notre
playing
Dame
in that.
fits
Yeah.
in terms of the
Right.
division.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know how that's lined up with the ACC. Trash conferences, I tend not to keep up with how they break those things down. So,
Well, they don't have them broken up into divisions this year. It just looks when you go, they just have them lined up. So they may have just eliminated divisions this year, and they might just be going with an outright champion and eliminating the ACC championship game. Like I don't. That's what it looks like. Because they added Notre Dame to the ACC this year.
Right.
I think it's a 1 year deal, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Right.
they're playing an ACC conference schedule, so I don't know how. But again, I don't know how they're breaking it down where they're doing.
I
the
never know
Coastal
how that
and
works
Atlantic.
because Notre Dame usually shows up in the ACC in basketball, but I always
Yeah.
know football they were always independent. So I don't know what the deal is there.
Right. I mean, because they have their own independent TV deals with NBC and stuff that doesn't make them like congruent. Is in the ACC will participate in the championship based on this regular season. Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. So, so it sounds like the ACC championship game is still happening, and they're just going to take the two best records so they could meet again.
Yeah.
Right. So this might not be the last.
Wouldn't it be interesting
edition.
if the SEC decided to do something like that and we just had the two best teams from the conference rather than it being divisional?
You know, I don't know if I'd like that.
Yeah, I
I don't
don't
know
think
if
I
I like
would
that.
either. But
Right. It would
but
take
so
it would take
I
some
think
bite out of Alabama Auburn every year. Right. Like.
I don't know that it would though. So like, let's think about that. Like, what if we both went into that game undefeated and then we had to play again the next week? That would suck. Actually, I would
That
Yeah, I
would
would hate
really
that.
suck.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I
Terrible.
would not want to do that.
No.
Yeah,
Bama
yeah,
I
back
mean,
to
it's
back.
bad enough.
No,
It's bad
no.
enough. We would kind of have to already do that with Georgia, but
Yeah, just
Alabama.
once a year, once a year.
yeah, yeah. That does suck. I don't know. Like the ACC is terrible, so forget them. But I do anticipate. What do you feel like is going to happen in that game? I know we don't typically talk about other conferences on this show, but
Notre Dame has to not Notre Dame. Basically, they have to
Right.
prove that they can get over the hump. Until then, I do not believe in you or your undefeated record.
All right, like so. Let me just go ahead and say this because Brian comes on this show and he bashes Jimbo Fisher, the same Jimbo Fisher that beat us in that national title game with Jameis Winston. And I'm not as hard on Jimbo. I don't believe they should have backed up the Brinks truck to get him to Texas A&M.
we had Gus Malzahn, so like let's
Yeah,
be
yeah,
fair.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. So, but like, I'm not as hard on Jimbo as Brian
hot
is.
kettle.
But I will tell you, I think that Brian Kelly is one of the most overrated overpaid coaches in college football. Way back when, I think it was like 2010, when he took that job. He came, in my day job, I do things with technology, and he came to give a speech in New Jersey to the Notre Dame Alumni Club. And man, this was the phoniest crap I think I've ever heard. I listened to this man speak, and I was like, he will never win a championship there. And I took so much pleasure. This is the only time I ever take pleasure in a Bama championship. But they put a beat down with Captain Catfish that they had on defense, Manti Te'o.
Yeah,
2012, right?
Catfish.
They had just the best beat down. I mean, it was so satisfying to see them get beat down. So like, I'm not a big Brian Kelly fan. Like, I can't with him. It's just how I feel. I'm never going to change my mind about it. So like, I think that they get like, I'm mad that Trevor Lawrence is out because it's a chance for them to not get exposed in this game based on how this freshman QB plays.
Right.
Yo, I said this when I was watching the game. I don't remember if I actually said it on air, but like that dude throwing that out route to his left, that out to the left, he was airmailing that every single time. I'm just wondering if the coaches here, like I sit and I watch film, and I'm not even analyzing film. I'm not going back and watching a lot of these games. This is what I'm seeing live on TV, and I'm like, I'm like, I can't be the only person seeing this stuff. Like I don't get paid to look at film and do but it's clear when he's throwing the out to his left, he airmails it he was like high every single throw. He only completed it one time the whole game, and the receiver had to jump to catch it. Every single time it was an out route to the left. Didn't really matter the depth of the throw. Like the further downfield, the worse his accuracy was on that throw. And it's like, I can't be the only person seeing that. So I'm wondering, do the Clemson coaches go back, show him this on film, and they get him to rep that a bunch of times so he can throw it better? Or do they go back and show that to him on film or see that on film and say, we're not calling that route anymore because he's not throwing it well? Do the defensive coaches for Notre Dame say, oh my God, he can't throw the out route to the left. He's going to airmail it every time. If you're on that side of the field, expect a high throw. I just wonder what's going to happen with that.
If I had to guess, I would say it'd be the latter, because it's not like this is your QB for the year. Like Trevor is coming back in another week's time. So we could just game plan around his deficiencies and get on with it. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, this seems to have vaulted Mac Jones into the number one conversation.
Yeah.
The conversation, right?
Right.
And just kind of tossed Trevor Lawrence out because this was supposed to be his statement game, right? Like he could have solidified the Heisman if he'd gone for 350 and 5 TDs in this game. He probably would have, locked up the Heisman. So unfortunately for him, that he's out in this one because of the timing, right? Like it just kind of takes him out of the Heisman conversation. Notre Dame is mid, period, Brian. Like that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Notre Dame is what Clemson was years ago.
Yeah, I'm trying
to get over the hump.
Like, listen, anybody sitting here waiting on Notre Dame to win the championship, we'll be cashing social security checks, fellas, before they win a national championship. So I don't think Brian Kelly is a good coach. I think that he gets good enough talent. He seems to get, and he gets real. I don't know how y'all feel, but he gets really lucky in big games during the regular season, right? Because of their whole deal, they have to play a somewhat difficult schedule every year because they're essentially just cherry picking, and people want to take them on because they want the marquee win on their record, non-conference win on their record. But he loses a lot of these games. I'm just not sure at what point that fan base just doesn't say you're not getting it done. It's not like they play in a conference where they could say we're the conference champions every year. Right. Like they literally finish as the champions of nothing every year. So it's national championship or bust at Notre Dame. Right. Yeah. A good record means nothing. Like we can beat Bama and we can say, hey, we got the SEC championship this year. Right.
Yeah. I agree. And I think too, if they want to make some noise and get to the playoffs, this would have to be your year because you don't have Michigan. You don't have Michigan State. You don't have USC. You don't have Stanford. You don't have all these other teams
They
that
are
you have
playing
to.
in the mid ACC conference.
Yeah.
And they only have one tough game this whole season. If Notre Dame cannot run the table this year, they don't deserve to be spoken of.
In the top 10.
Brian Kelly
They don't deserve
should
to be in the top 10. Yeah, they're not a top 10 team if they can't win this game.
It's an interesting question from B. Will right here. I'm gonna say no, but
let's see how he finishes out the season without Waddle, right? Like, I mean, he could make a statement. No, I mean, because they
have enough tools there where Waddle is a difference maker. But like they've got other receivers there. Devontae
I don't know.
Is real. Michi is real.
I'm not arguing they don't have talent. They got talent, but listen, the type of chemistry that he had with Waddle before the injury, it looked like I was like, man, do these guys sleep in bunk beds and talk to each other before bed at night? Like they are drinking warm milk and giving each other shoulder massages, and they are connected. Like they are close, and they seem almost psychically connected. If you watch the chemistry between, I said this is the most dynamic QB to wide receiver connection in college football right now, and his injury was kind of like reminded me of the other Alabama receiver, Tyrone Prothro injury. Prothro was going to be dynamic. And I'm hoping that Waddle, we're wishing him, if any Alabama fans are watching, we're wishing him, a quick and speedy recovery. As college football fans, we are robbed by not having him play college football. I said it like he was my favorite player in college football this year. He was my favorite player to watch. He is skilled. He can run every route. He's got great hands. He's got world-class speed, and he seems to just be a game breaker. So without him, I think that Mac Jones can really make a statement in this Heisman race as well, too, if he can keep his numbers up, right? I don't think people will overlook that if he continues to put up, if it's next man up and, one of these other receivers steps into that slot, then he becomes the common denominator in this conversation for real, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to happen, honestly. And then you have to start to wonder, I don't know, man. Mac Jones is just really accurate with the football. Like he
doesn't make mistakes.
He's putting the ball where it needs to be consistently. Like somebody can pull up his completion percentage, and see. But like, man, he's making some throws out there that are pro level throws. Like he's putting it on the money to guys, and that's one of those things when we talk about the difference between a pro caliber or a next level quarterback and the quarterback who we have right now. It's when the opportunities present themselves, are you making the big throw with pressure in your face? Like he's staring down pressure a lot of these times into the blitz and still making amazing throws. So like, I just don't know how you can say Mac Jones isn't a great quarterback. Like he's accurate. He's on time. He uses his feet when he can, but he doesn't have to most often. He's just making plays out there from the quarterback position within the pocket. He's a good quarterback, man. I have nothing bad to say about Mac Jones.
So for quick reference, while we're on the subject, I just want to give everybody some historical reference. Mac Jones right now is 139 for 177 passing this year. At 78.5 completion percentage.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
2,100 yards, almost 2,200 yards, 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now,
that's crazy.
In comparison, Joe Burrow finished the season last year 402 for 527 yards attempts, right? 76.3 completion percentage. Right, so we're going to be in a shortened season this year, so he's not going to get as many throws.
Right,
as Burrow got last year, but he is at this current moment 2% higher in terms of completion percentage than Burrow is. Now he's not going to catch him in touchdowns. He's not going to throw for 60 touchdowns this year, right? So he's not having the same kind of prolific season that Burrow had. But from a completion percentage standpoint, Joe Burrow had the best season that we've ever seen in college football.
Yeah.
Right. So he is having a similar type accuracy, and I think Joe Burrow is the most accurate college quarterback I've ever seen. So Matt Burrow is even more accurate. You know, he will have a smaller sample size, so we do have to keep it in perspective. But he is having a Heisman worthy type season.
I think there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. Like you think about the first year that Burrow came in and he started, and he was just a gamer, right? Like he was just gritty and he was in games making tough throws. You look at Mac Jones last year in the Auburn game. You know, he made his mistakes, but he played a heck of a game.
Of course.
Super accurate with the football, staring down the blitz again, making throws after making mistakes, still coming back out there making more plays. That's what you saw from Joe Burrow the first year that he played in LSU, and then he came back and had the historic season. Mac Jones is on a similar type trajectory where the first season he looked, you know, it was like up and down. You know, of course, again, still smaller sample sizes in both. We only saw Mac Jones in what 4 games that season last year.
Right.
This season, you know, he's going to have less games to be able to play, but he still looks very accurate with the football. He is the type of quarterback I think that can make the transition to the next level that pro offenses need to be looking at. He doesn't have the same kind of mobility, I don't think, that Joe Burrow does. Joe Burrow has like sneaky mobility, where it's like he's not,
for sure,
you know, game breaker.
Yeah, sneaky athletic.
But he gets away when necessary. But those are the kind of guys.
You saw it in the SEC championship against how he was avoiding Georgia defenders.
Those are the guys that give defenses a headache, right? Like that.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't get him down, and he's accurate even when moving around in the pocket. He's just annoying, right? It's like, God, can we just sack the guy? And you put pressure on him, and he's still making accurate throws. He just hops back up and goes to the next play. So I don't know, man. The kid is nice. I'm not looking forward to facing him this year.
And you know, not to take anything away from him or Tua, because that was compared. They also have an amazing system in Alabama with Steve Sarkisian. Sure. Great athletes around. It's almost reminiscent of the early 2000s when you had the Dwayne Jarretts, Mike Williams, and those same coaches at USC just putting up video game numbers on opposing defenses. You have that at Alabama. And all you need is an accurate quarterback who can make plays, and that is exactly what they had previously in Tua, and that's what they have currently in Mac Jones. So a lot of offensive prosperity for Alabama.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and somebody mentioned this in the comments on, I was looking at some Bama fan page, and they were talking about Mac Jones and talking about the difference between the two quarterbacks. And fundamentally, there's not a ton of difference. They're both accurate on-time quarterbacks. Really, the only difference is Tua's physical athleticism to be able to go and pick up yards with his legs. Mac Jones, again, he's not going to give that to you as often, but that's also the reason why Tua got hurt more often, because he was getting outside of the pocket a lot more.
Sure.
Tua had the propensity to want to try to make something happen every single play. It's like, okay, the play is breaking down. I'm going to go get it with my legs. Mac Jones, like, the play is breaking down. I'm going to escape and throw the ball away. Or maybe I can sneak and go get 4 or 5 yards, but that's never his mentality for real. It's pretty much somebody's got to be open down there because I have phenomenal receivers out here. Just give me the time to analyze this thing. But yeah, all right. So I'm looking forward to a couple of games this weekend. Let's get into something that we promised we would do Wednesday, and talking about where we are so far. So if it's your first time tuning in, I have no idea what planet you have been on, but you are not in the right place on Saturdays and Wednesdays. But in case you didn't know, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, we are right here doing our midweek show, and we pick our winners for every game in the SEC every week. So every week we decide who we think is going to win the game. So now we are going to stop and take our midseason tally to see how accurate these picks have been. So here we go. These are the numbers so far for our picks.
Sheesh.
Yikes.
Listen, the most people who pick games, honestly, to be over 50%, let's just say that, honestly, is actually good in picking games. Most people don't pick 50% of their picks correctly, right? So I think we've been doing a fairly decent job. We've been doing if we were to take like a highlight reel of picks, right? Like, of course, I think number one on there, I don't even really want to say this, but I am going to say
I'll take my participation trophy now, Ike. Thanks, man. Thank you, brother. I put it over here.
The highlight of picks so far this season, I will have to give it to Mike calling the Texas A&M Florida game down to literally it being decided by a field goal at the end of the game. That is probably the most on point take that has happened on the War Report so far this season. I'd have to give it to Mike for that.
Listen, guys, first of all, I just want to thank my mom. Like growing up, she taught me about discernment and good judgment. So, Mom, you're watching this, right? Thank you. You're the reason that I'm here today. And she just said, son, sometimes God will just speak to you. And you have to listen to that little voice on the inside. And it said, that little voice that day said, Michael, Brian's a clown. Right? I said, okay, God, I hear you. I will heed the Holy Spirit here and pick Texas A&M by field goal at the last minute. So, these picks are, let's be real, these picks aren't easy. And anybody professing to know what's going to happen from week to week,
which is why I said, like most people, it's hard to even be 50% in your picks. Like that's the most difficult thing to do, to be right half of the time in picking games, because you don't know. It's all speculation. Right. You look at what happens on the tape and you're like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen based upon what I've seen so far. But it could not go that way at all. Like we have to sit here also, while acknowledging the accuracy of that pick, also say there were weeks in specific where I missed every single pick I had. Like I went 0 for 6 one week, did not get a single game right.
Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and throw Caesar a bone though. Like Caesar came over to the dark side and had the courage to pick again and fight the Homer bones in his body and pick against Auburn a couple of these weeks. And I mean, even though the score didn't turn out that way, I can't really say how wrong we were, because we could have lost those games. Right.
Yeah, again, so that's what I'm saying. There's literally no science to this. It is just looking at because again, I've been very wrong. Like I might have the highest score on the board only by one game. Do I have the highest score on the board? But it's just, I'm making picks based on conjecture a lot. It's just like, all right, well, this is what I think is going to happen. And it's just happened to be right half of the time.
So that our viewers are not confused, we watch the games that we're picking. Like we watch these games.
Yeah.
So we're not.
I'm not just picking names out of a hat. Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
We watch the
looking
game
at what I've seen. Based upon how this defense is playing, how this offense is playing, what things I think this defense is susceptible to versus what that offense provides. Like it's educated guessing, but it's guessing. Like it's guessing.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure out based upon what we see.
In a coronavirus type of season, though, these picks are not from game to game. How can you how you can gauging what's going to happen from week to week is even harder, right? With no fall camp really, or not the usual fall camp, and then a lot of especially us, we were supposed to open up our season with North Carolina, and I can't tell. I mean, our season could have gone really good or really wrong if we had opened up with North Carolina. The whole makeup of our season may have been different if we had played the normal schedule this year. So, this, I don't know. Time will tell whether it was better or worse for us. I think, honestly, based on how North Carolina opened the season, it might have been worse for us if we had opened with them. We would have learned a lot more about our deficiencies a lot faster if we had opened with them instead of Kentucky. But from week to week, even like teams like Kentucky, they've been competitive all year.
Right.
Nobody's really running them off the field. Their record doesn't really reflect how tough a team they've been this year. So the picks are hard. They are. I mean, this won't be the last time that I pick again. I'm going to spoiler alert. I'm going to pick against Auburn again before the end of the season. Right.
Well, Bama's still on the schedule. That's not a hot take, Mike.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, and Texas A&M is still on the schedule. I still don't know which way I'm going with that one.
Sure.
Right. So, as we progress through these last 4 games, we'll see how things pan out. But, it's good to be on record, this year with these picks and to be able to look back and say, hey, this is what we thought was going to happen. And this is what actually happened. So, yeah.
And let me just say, it's difficult to predict Auburn games anyway, because, again, when it looks like doom and gloom, they finally decide, hey, let's make adjustments now and let's get better. Right. And then we're picking not knowing what they're doing behind the scenes, and they just look trash, and then they come out and boom, 48-11 to LSU. So it's just it's difficult to predict these games as these teams are trying to improve and make adjustments. So we're predicting off of past games and what we've seen out of them,
right?
And then they'll come out and be a different team.
But we're also predicting based on because let's be real, even, like nobody saw LSU coming, but Brian was very consistent in saying that their defense is trash, right?
Fair.
So and we acknowledge that. Yeah, so we acknowledge that on this show. But the hesitation that you and I had was, well, is it going to be one of these weeks where we play down to the competition? Right,
well, it's going to be South Carolina all over again. Basically.
Right, that's the factor that makes Auburn difficult to pick from week to week because we honestly don't know what Auburn team is going to show up. And if you're watching there are a lot of great Auburn sports content creators out there. Vernon Kennard, Jason Campbell has his own show. Duke the Scoop, look him up. Right, he's doing some great things. But if you're watching anybody and they're making claims on what Auburn is going to be from week to week. Like I just wouldn't buy into it, right? Like, I don't know how anybody could look at what we've done this year and see many patterns, suggested patterns in our play, right? The only thing that we can really say about this team that's been consistent is the defensive backfield has been pretty consistent this year, right? And the O-line has gotten better from week to week.
Yeah, right? You can definitely look at trends of what's happening. You can say, like you said, the offensive line is trending in the right direction. And that is over even before, these last two games. Like, where I'm not taking the two games against these poor defenses. I'm talking about 4 to 5 weeks of seeing them get better every week, specifically in their pass protection, right? Like, Georgia destroyed us up front, right? But after the Georgia game, I think they went back in and they were like, we're not going to have a repeat of that. And from that game forward, the offensive line has done a much better job run blocking. That's when you start to see the emergence of a Tank Bigsby. And that's when you start to see Bo Nix have more opportunities to make accurate throws down the field. He didn't capitalize on that a lot prior to the last 2 weeks. But you saw the offensive line giving him the protection that he needed and giving us the opportunity to make some gains down the field. We had a couple of bad drops on some drives. We had some situations where we weren't necessarily in pressure, but we were running away from pressure that wasn't like it was things like that happening consistently. But I think we've done that's the good trend that we've seen for the offense is the offensive line. And I think that's going to be key to our success going forward is does the offensive line continue to get better even after the injury that we've had?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And, I think that the bigger thing that I want Auburn fans to take from watching us at the War Report is we're just some guys who like Auburn football, right? Like when we started out with the idea of the War Report, I don't know if we actually told this on air or talked about why we decided to do this, but like literally, so we're a bye week. We can talk about whatever we want to. Literally, I ran into Mike randomly at a, you were in town for the Magic City Classic. Magic City Classic, if you're not from Birmingham, we have a thing called the Magic City Classic here. It's Alabama A&M versus Alabama State in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where myself and Caesar live. So Mike was in town visiting a mutual friend of ours from Auburn. We all knew each other from back at Auburn. That's where we met. I've known Brian forever, but we met each other down at Auburn. Caesar, actually, I knew you before because you went to Minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to Bottenfield, but I went to Alabama School of Fine Arts or high school, so I knew you from like middle school,
right?
Back. But anyway, that's irrelevant to the story. The story is we all met each other down at Auburn, or we kind of became friends down at Auburn, and then so ran into Mike, and we were just sitting around talking about Auburn football and just having conversations like what we have here on camera. And he was like, yeah, because me and Caesar, man, before the game, we get together and we talk about what we think is going to happen. And then we'll hit each other up at halftime. And then after the game, we'll sit there and we'll talk about everything. And I was like, yo, me and Brian do the exact same thing. Like, I will call him before the game. I'll call him at halftime and I'll call him after the game. And I was like, man, why don't we just get on camera and do this? Like, we're going to be doing it anyway. Might as well get on camera and do the same thing. And we decided to do this mid-season last season, and it's been going this way so far. So, saying that all that to say, we're just inviting you guys into fan talk. This is what we do as Auburn fans. We complain about our team, and we breathe sighs of relief when we actually win games that it didn't look like we were supposed to, and we bitch about our coach, and we talk about our quarterback, and we love Auburn football, and we want to see them do really well. So we're really passionate about it, and we want you guys to join into those passionate conversations. So that's pretty much it, man. That's what the War Report is. We're just some guys that love Auburn.
Yeah, I think the fan perspective. We've had some fans of opposing teams that subscribe to our YouTube channel chime in and say, "Hey, those are some really honest reactions to these games." Arkansas, we're like, "Man, we got lucky. We got real lucky."
Yeah.
And the opposing team's fans, they're searching at us out because this sort of content doesn't exist SEC wide, for every team. And they were looking to heal their pain. They were looking for blood, and they came to our channel thinking that these homers are going to say Auburn should have won it. Like, we deserve that. That was the right call. And we were like, nah, that was highly questionable. Very fortunate to win this game. When you guys tune in, mostly what I hope our fans take away from this show is just you're going to get honest reactions from us every single time, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe in being a homer. I believe, I'm a former Auburn film guy, so I believe in what's on the tape. The tape says.
Right.
I don't delve much into hope, and I make my predictions based on what I see on tape, and until they do something different, I will go with what I see on tape.
And I am a complete homer. I will admit that up front. Like, I am going to look for every possible optimistic way that Auburn can squeak out a win in every game. It's like, if we could run like a triple reverse on 3rd and 20, we could possibly, I'm going to look for every, but it is going to be based upon what I see on the film. I'm going to look at the opposing team. I'm going to analyze what I see them doing well and not doing well versus what we have the ability to do. And I'm going to talk through scenarios that allow us to win the games. Now, am I going to pick us to win every single game? I don't know. I haven't picked us to lose yet, but I do, because I believe we legitimately could have won every game this season. Now, Georgia played possum on us week 1 because the Georgia team that showed up and played us week 2 was not the Georgia team that played against Arkansas in week 1. I'm sorry. If I had seen that Georgia team play Arkansas the way they played us, there's no way I would have picked us to win.
Right.
Right. The other game that we lost this year, South Carolina, we legitimately should have won that game. Could have. I won't say should have, because the convergence of things that happened in the game, we deserve to lose it, right? But we could have won that game had we played mistake-free, right? Like, if we don't give up 3 interceptions.
That's a fair statement.
I fully believe we win that game. But there's nothing going into the game that says to me, you know what, Bo Nix is going to throw 3 pretty bad picks this game. Watching Bo Nix play, I'm not predicting 3 poor interceptions thrown, right? So that's the reason I don't pick against us in those 2 scenarios, which we actually lose. The rest of the games, there were definitely, as Mike has said, opportunities where I picked us to win. We did win. Probably should have lost, right? So, again, there's literally no rhyme or reason to how a football game plays out. It's a game of inches for a reason. A bounce one way or the other way changes the trajectory of a game, and you can't predict those bounces.
Right. Listen, if we were calling ACC games, right, and you tuned in to Notre Dame, Clemson, Boston College last week,
right,
and saw how Boston College came out in that game, nobody's predicted that, right? They came out.
Trevor Lawrence being gone, you can't tell me that you thought that defense was going to get shredded the way they did the first time.
Right. Yeah. Boston College was scoring every which way on them to start that game, and ultimately, good teams, experienced teams finish. And that was always my worry for Boston College in the game, was no matter how big they get up, there's something about bad teams that they prove they're bad at the end of the game in the final, 15 minutes every single time. And that's what happened. So, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So they lost that game, and they put a valiant effort, but it's still an L on their schedule. And if you are, the betting man among us is Brian. I don't get too much into spreads and things of that nature, right? But, I would, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say probably Clemson didn't cover that week.
Oh, I think that's a safe assumption.
Yeah. Like you're betting the line on Clemson. They didn't cover last week. So, it's not an exact science. But with Auburn in particular, we have had such an up and down relationship with the rankings, with preseason rankings. And that's one of the things that makes Auburn hard to predict. In the years that we went undefeated, right? We 2004, 2010, and then we lost one game in 2014. Auburn starts well outside the top 10, right? That's when we do best, right? In 2004, we were in the closer to 20. I think we opened the season like 17 or something like that. 2010, we weren't on anybody. I didn't even think we started the season ranked. We went from unranked to national champion. Nick Marshall's year, we were unranked because we were 3-9 the year before. So nobody had us in the
coaching staff and everything.
Yeah. And this year, my worry was, here these guys come again, ranked highly, top 15 team.
No, that's 100% how I felt when we were ranked so high. I was like, we're not going to have a season.
We generally have good.
That's the thing. Y'all are not alone. There are a lot of Auburn fans I've heard that they prefer us not being factored into the conversation preseason. Like they want us to either be ranked somewhere between 20 or 25 if you're going to rank us, or don't rank us at all. And then we feel like the world is against us, and then we start playing out of our minds.
Yeah, when the weight, I think, but again, this is why I'm so hard on coaching, right? When the weight of expectation is on the team, they seem to, not know how to handle that consistently. And we have a few kind of aberration years, but we never have started a season ranked in the top 10. Think of a season where we started ranked in the top 10 and then finished in the top 10 in the last, 20 years, right? When we finished in the top 10, it's because we started well outside the top 10. And then half the season, people don't take us seriously until 2004, we beat LSU, and now people are starting to pay attention.
Right.
And, I remember going into that, we were all in school during this time, but I remember going into that season.
Hey, man, don't be telling my age like that, bro.
We all deal with it. They going into that season, off season, we had a big, some big decisions made, and it was widely believed that either Carnell Williams or Ronnie Brown were going to go pro because they were going to share a backfield, and they shocked the world and said that they were both coming back. Right. So, we lost some at linebacker. That was 2003 was Carlos Dansby's last year, and Dontarius Thomas left, but we still had Travis Williams, I think, was still on that team. We had some solid linebacker play. Obviously, Travis is our linebacker coach now. Carlos Rogers was on that team. We had 4 first-round draft picks on that team. And, it wasn't an exciting Sugar Bowl versus Virginia Tech, but that was no Virginia Tech team to be laughed at. I remember they had one of the fastest guys I'd ever seen at the time, in Eddie Royal, right, at wide receiver, playing. I think he went on to play for the Bears and a few other NFL teams. Mm-hmm. But we finished, and we got robbed out of a championship that year because officially there's no champion from 2004. Let's go ahead and say that, right? Officially there's no champion because USC vacated, and the loser doesn't get to claim it, right? So, we beat a very good Virginia Tech team, went 13-0. As far as I'm concerned, if we claim championships,
we were the best team that season. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think we wouldn't have got drubbed 52-19 or whatever they lost by. Like, I'll tell you that, because that was
USC was legit.
No, they were legit. I just think that we were good enough to beat that team that year.
I want to see it because that would have been a rematch of the previous year when they came to Jordan here and blanked us 23.
Right. It was going to be my next point. Right. We started that season ranked 6, and USC came 17. And I'll never forget. This is the saddest Auburn football game I've ever attended. Yeah. Right. I get my camera. I'm headed up to the film, and then I remember having a conversation with Julia Rosegreen before about whether we were going to win this game or not. And they had Mike Williams on that team, and nobody knew what Matt Leinart was going to be. And
Right,
they just
Carson Palmer just left.
and they goose egged us 23-0 in that game, and it was one of the. I mean, I've never heard 90,000 people so quiet after a football game. It was just the sadness, right? But that's where Auburn. That's what Auburn has been. So if you watch this show, and you are like, man, Mike is really hard on Auburn. That's because I've got like 2 decades of disappointment. Right? Like, I've been watching this for 2 decades, and it doesn't matter who the coach is. We just have these aberration type years where they seem to outperform expectations, right? And going into this season, I'm hard on Bo Nix, but let me tell you, I want to clear this up because I'm going to continue to be hard on Bo Nix, but I want to say this. He's a kid. It's just football. Football is just a game. Football is not life, right? So I have no ill will towards Bo Nix at all. If anything,
on the contrary, I want to see him improve. It's frustrating to not see it.
Right. Which is why we're hard. Why we're hard on him. I feel he's not playing to his potential, but I'm harder on the coaching because look what happened when we were in school with Jason. Right. He played for 4 different offensive coordinators in 4 years, and Al Borges, when he finally came in, he put in a system that just allowed Jason to be, better than average, right? And we had 2 running backs that went in the top 5 of the NFL draft next year, so Jason didn't have to carry that team. He just needed to make the throws that he needed to. And the receivers that we had were sneaky underrated that year. Courtney Taylor, Devin Aroma-Shadu, Ben Obomanu, and Anthony Mix were that was a great receiving team that we had. So, Silas Daniels played on that team as well. So he was kind of underrated. And I just feel like over the years, we had, and then we followed that up with Brandon Cox. Now he was mid. Brandon Cox was mid. Like he was a lefty. He was slow. But still, he had a 10-2 year. Yeah. He had a 10-2 year. I remember. I think it was 2007, or 2000. We beat Florida. We squeaked one out against Florida, and then we got drove in the SEC championship game, essentially. So I don't know. Actually, I think we fell apart late season and ended up not making the SEC.
I was about to say we didn't make the SEC championship.
Right. Yeah. So then came the Chris Todd years. Like we were kind of in the Kyle Frazier's. It was kind of in the doldrums, and then Cam, right? Like in 2010. And then immediately back to the football doldrums,
years,
right? And then Nick Marshall, right? And then we thought we had solved the formula because this is the first time in a long time that I felt we had a clear heir apparent in Jeremy Johnson. And I don't care what anybody says, they ruined Jeremy Johnson. That guy.
That's when we found out Gus's deficiency. That's when we discovered his deficiency. That he's been having success with JUCOs and transfers and not really developing a kid out of high school.
Right. So after Nick Marshall, after that experience, we're like, okay, so does this system need an athletic quarterback to be successful? Right. Is it time to stop pretending that we don't need a Cam type quarterback, to excel in this system? And, we had a couple more, and, the Shaun White years were the worst for me. I mean, I was like, we really don't have anybody better than Shaun White. He was a head case, and, I wish him well, but he was a disciplinary issue.
I think my issue with Shaun White was, and he had all the heart in the world, I'll give it to him, but he continued to play hurt. And it was, and that's a situation where the coaches have to see this kid is not, he's not going to be able to perform at any. Like it was just bad watching him hobble around, not being able to really complete a pass because he couldn't really throw off of these busted ankle, whatever was going on with him.
Right.
And he always looked really out of sorts when he was out. Again, a ton of heart. Like the kid played hard, but like you said, he had discipline issues off the field. But it just made you say to yourself, man, is this all we have? Because behind him is Jeremy Johnson, who's going to go out here and throw a pick, or he's gonna stumble over his own feet trying to run the read option, or he's going to, you know, fumble the ball because he's not doing the ball. Like it was just gonna be something with him, right? Like Jeremy Johnson just wasn't. And that was so disappointing because the year before, when he came in relief duty against Arkansas, you saw it's like he was laser accurate, and it was just like, whoa,
that's where all of our confidence was coming from.
Yeah,
that game,
right.
But he completely fell apart the next season in starting duty, and then you get into this other kid coming in, and the thing I think I hated the most about that season was of all of the I think the game that frustrated me the most that season was the Georgia game, because Georgia was terrible that year, and we went to Georgia and lost that game. It was like 13-3. It was some like really low scoring, ugly number, and it was completely just because our offense was inept. Like our offense was just terrible.
Yeah.
I hated that game that season.
No,
Brian
man
says, nah, Jeremy Johnson just wasn't it.
No, I disagree.
I disagree, B, because my thing is you can see, okay, Jeremy Johnson was fragile up here, obviously, because again, Jeremy Johnson did things we're seeing Bo Nix was like he's doing. Bo Nix is doing some things that Jeremy Johnson was doing. Exactly. Bo Nix is just a competitor, and he just forgets his memory and just says, "I'm gonna go out here and try again." Jeremy is like
those two is like confidence, though. Like Bo Nix has a supreme level of confidence in himself. Jeremy didn't seem to be confident.
He didn't seem to have it. Like if he threw a pick, he was out of it.
Yeah,
right.
He never bounced back.
Yeah, but I put a lot of that on coaching, right? Like, you know, again, the developing the mental toughness and, you know, the confidence in what he was doing and being able to settle your quarterback down after they make a mistake. And, you know, I mean, you know, it's you know, it's funny how, you know, in every level of sports, we blame players before we blame coaches and organizations. Right. But the truth is they're more responsible for ruining some of these players. Right. So, you know, I look at Auburn in the same, you know, those two in the same kind of vein. Coach is the organization.
Sure.
In college football. Right. Because they pick the players and they're directly responsible for their development, not only as football players, but to some extent as human beings. Right. And they are mentors. They are a lot of things to these guys with the amount of time that they have to spend around the program, right? These guys don't have a whole lot of lives outside of football. I mean, you know, they have to take, you know, the early classes, you know, they have to be available for practice. They have study halls. Their whole life revolves around it, you know, and the systems that continuously produce good teams manage all aspects of that player's college experience well. Right. They keep them out of trouble. They keep them out of parties. They keep them out, you know, like, you know, they do the right things. They show up. They work hard. They don't do things. They're not staying up late at night. Right. You know, they are fresh for practice. You know, they're focused, and it shows in the results on the field on Saturdays. So when I look at what's happening now, kind of fast forwarding to the now things, a lot of my skepticism about the program is about after watching this for, you know, 8 years now, it feels like, right? How do I expect that they all of a sudden are going to flip the switch and figure out how to develop a QB? Because Cam,
I do think that Chad Morris is going to be helpful in that, though. I honestly believe Chad Morris is going to be helpful in the QB development. And this is and I'm going to let you get back to your point, but this is no slight to the OCs that we've had prior to now, our current it is a little bit of a slight to our current pass game coordinator. But I think that Chad Morris is just better at understanding what a quarterback that has to analyze defenses needs to do versus what Gus Malzahn, because, you know, as much as Gus Malzahn's system has had success, it was never dependent on a quarterback analyzing how a defense is playing in the secondary. It was all about reading a D lineman and reading a linebacker. Whatever they do, those are your keys. Like, you have pre-snap reads that you're doing, but the quarterback isn't doing most of that. He's going to a check with me system on the sideline to say, okay, this is what they're lined up in. Hold on, let's check to the sideline. Okay, call the play. Now I'm not reading the safety anymore. I'm not reading, the splits of whether he's playing inside leverage. Like the wide receivers aren't looking at, okay, is this guy playing me inside leverage or outside leverage? What does that mean for how they're playing on the back end? Is he lined up directly over the top of me? Where's the safe? Like the wide receivers aren't doing that because that's not a part of the scheme in Gus Malzahn's system. The quarterback's not doing that because that's not part of the scheme. It's really about ball handling here, reading what this D lineman is doing, reading where that linebacker is to make a determination on, do we have more blockers on the outside than throw the quick? Like it's just different in how they're reading versus a Chad Morris defense or offense.
And we'll get back to your point, Mike. But what I want to add to that is we have to factor in the trust level that Gus has with this coordinator that I don't think he's ever had before with the previous coordinator he's hired. Right. The reason why Chad Kelly is doing the things that Chad Morris is doing the thing that he's doing now is that Gus is allowing him to, right? Again, we can throw stones at Rhett Lashley, but Rhett Lashley is earning his paycheck at Miami. He's doing well. He didn't crash and burn. So there are coordinators that we've had at Auburn that have done well with the talent we've had. I just think Gus trusts this guy a lot more to allow him to actually
coach. Which is crazy. I think it's one of those things where it's almost like because Rhett had been with him for so long, it's not that he didn't trust Rhett, it's just that he was expecting Rhett to run his system. And Rhett Lashley, once he got from underneath Gus Malzahn's shadow, decided, I'm going to take this and do all the stuff I wanted to do at Auburn that Gus never let me do, right? And so his quarterbacks are slinging the ball all over the field at every other program that he's been to.
Now, he did pick up some air raid concepts at SMU.
That's what I'm saying.
That he added to his tool belt. So
he's learning how to develop a full, and Gus really never evolved from that concept of offense that he had.
Right.
And I think Chad Morris is allowing that, which, Chad Morris has not typically been like a great running coach. Like his run games have been pretty pedestrian.
Right.
They're taking the Gus Malzahn run concepts, adding the Chad Morris passing concept.
Best of both worlds.
A full offense.
Best
the
of
only
both
problem
worlds.
is right now, quarterback can't necessarily do all the pass concepts that are necessary, so they're having to lean more on the run concepts. But I think it's a good trajectory because of where we are. But anyway, go back to what you were saying.
Again, I hope that's true. I hope that's true because that's where a large amount of my skepticism is born from, about our program. It's can we, finally break through this whole thing? Because if you look at the more consistent programs in college football, the quarterback position isn't really in question. They either have a solid game manager and a lot of talent around them, or they have a game breaker at quarterback.
Right.
And you look at Auburn, and when we have been able to find a game breaker at quarterback, it's national championship time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's how well they recruit all the other.
Reason why our frustration is so heavy with our quarterback, because we know we are a quarterback away from being the best team in college football.
I think if he, again, it's an identity issue in my opinion, because if we can get into Bo's head again, sometimes this is where his confidence works against him, right? Bo thinks he's a game breaker, and what we're trying to get Bo to understand is, no, you're a game manager,
right?
You just need to get the ball to where it needs to go, put the ball in the actual game breaker's hands, and we'll be fine. We have the defense to keep us in games. Case in point, 2019.
Hand the ball to
protect the ball and run and manage the offense, and we will be fine. We don't need you to be Johnny Manziel. We don't need you to be Nick Marshall. We don't need you doing all this stuff you're doing. Just manage the game.
Manage the game
gives you.
Right. Yeah. That's his role in this system. Right. I honestly believe that that's his role in this system. That's where we find success. So, let's say we win out. If Auburn wins out, where do they deserve to be in the conversation in terms of, national? I mean, we broke back into the top 25 last week with a drubbing of LSU, and
that's an interesting question though. Like if we win out, that means that we've beat Alabama and Texas A&M, two teams that will be in the top 10. So we deserve, I think, at that point in time to be back into the conversation of a top 10 team. But that South Carolina loss is really
it's going to be that's going to be an eyesore down the road. I don't know if I think we will be in a conversation, but there will be people who will not forgive that loss or excuse that loss.
I mean that, and then the controversial wins that we've had will make us look really shaky. But I don't think that you can ignore winning at Alabama and against Texas A&M to lose, so to end the season. That's just undeniable that if you beat the crap out of LSU, who was regardless of what they are this year, they are the defending national champion, and then you go on a run where that includes beating the according to our rankings, the best team in college football right now, which is the Alabama Crimson Tide, and a top 10 team right now in Texas A&M. You can't ignore those wins, right? So you have to say that this team has gotten progressively better every week, and they deserve to be back in the conversation of where we started the season, which is in the top 10.
Right. It'll be a tale of two different halves of the season. Yeah. Have we convinced people that we are the team that we have showed the latter half, or are we still kind of the team that we were in the beginning? If we're beating good teams and competing and win out, we probably show that we're the latter, because if we're anything like we resembled the first half of the year, we don't beat Bama. We don't beat A&M. So, like I said, that alone would put us back in the conversation.
I agree.
Well, we're going to close out here. I just want to get to a couple of fan comments that we've had on here. I don't even like calling y'all fans. A couple of family comments that we got in here.
There you go.
So Brian Dixon, my boy Brian Dixon, what's up, man? It says no development. Almost seems as you're as good as you're going to get when you get to Auburn. That's definitely been the case on the offensive side.
On the offensive side of the ball, for sure.
Right. Yeah, you are what you are when you come in our system, and that's what you're going to leave. Right.
Yeah. Which I'm hoping to see that change as Chad Morris gets a hold of this. And the question also you have to ask yourself is, if Chad Morris has success to finalize this season, is he going to stay at Auburn? We'll see. Gus is the epitome of micromanaging, but I think Mississippi State game will tell us a lot. I agree with that as well, just because Mississippi State it's one of those games that we're supposed to win right now, the way that we're playing, and I think with our talent level, and if they come out there and play up to their potential and go ahead and handle business, that'll tell us kind of where this offense is and which direction we're moving in.
I don't expect us to beat them the way we beat LSU, but I expect to see us. It'd be nice if that game wasn't in doubt. Right,
They got to drop 50 plus on Mississippi State. I'm not so sure about that. I don't agree about that.
They're dropping 50 plus.
Well, I mean,
because their defense is better.
Mississippi State.
Their defense is better.
Who's dropped 50 plus on Mississippi State?
That's a great question.
I don't know that anybody's put up that much. LSU scored a ton of points, but Mississippi State scored a ton more.
Right.
But Mississippi State hasn't been putting up those kind of points lately, so I don't know that I think our defense is good enough to hold Mississippi State under 20, and I think if we get to 25, the mid-20s, I think should be enough to win that game. Just based upon the way that their offense has been playing since game one.
Right. Yeah. So
our defense has been playing.
They've allowed 34, 21, 24, 28, and 41.
Bama.
So they're giving up points. I mean, they haven't really allowed. They've allowed 40 plus points twice. They gave up 44 points to LSU and 41 points to Bama.
I understand 50.
No. They gave up 34 points to LSU and 41 points to Bama.
I understand, style points. I get that, but this is a defense that has, for the most part, kept them in games. It's just that their offense has been so abysmal. That they've still been dropping them.
If we win out the conference, so that would include the conference championship. So let's talk about that. So we'd have 2 losses in the SEC. Bama would still go from our side.
Bama would still go to the SEC championship game if we win out.
We wouldn't
lose to us. So we need Bama to lose too.
Right. So Bama's got to lose to somebody else, and who is that going to be?
Right.
Georgia was, I think, the best shot.
Yeah. Let's see, and then we got one more here. And I want to put up Nick Marshall back in the day. I don't know what that was in reference to.
Yeah. We were talking about quarterbacks there. Nick was he was one of my favorites to come through Auburn. He was exciting to watch. He was really exciting to watch.
Nick Marshall was one of those guys where you never really knew what he was going to do if he was required to throw the ball. but he found ways to win games. And that's really one of those. It's like I can't point to very many games that Nick Marshall cost us, right?
Right.
Like absent of maybe that Texas A&M game where they had the 2 fumbles on the snap that we lost. That wasn't 100% on Nick Marshall. One of them, the
Right.
center snapped the ball when he wasn't even expecting it. The other one, actually, both of those were bad snaps on the center. That wasn't even Nick Marshall's
I actually
fault.
fault the center more than Nick Marshall.
Yeah. And there were games where his passing, his lack of ability to really throw the ball and threaten defenses with his arm made it tougher for us in those games. But like you look at like the Kansas State game that he had, where he came up with a ton of big 3rd down throws, and like Nick Marshall was just a gamer, man. Like he found ways to win games. So, but yeah, I don't know. Nick Marshall, if Cam Newton never was a thing, would be probably my favorite Auburn player of all time, just because he was just a gamer, man, and he was one of those guys he's going to do whatever he feels like is necessary for us to get W's.
And I felt like he didn't give the love and the respect he should have gotten, because that was right around the time that Johnny Manziel was in the league and he was getting all the love. But Nick Marshall was just a quiet assassin. Like he would just go to work on you. He'll put up numbers and just go home. Like he wouldn't talk a big game. He wasn't, you know what I mean?
He was a big talker,
Yeah.
He took a ton of big hits and just popped right back up. I mean, that can't come from him. He was a cornerback right before he played.
Yeah.
But
he still holds the Iron Bowl record for most yards by any QB against Bama. Right, he threw for 400 and almost 450 yards in that 55-44 Iron Bowl we had a few years back. I mean, he was. I think that if Gus had let the QBs work with other QB coaches and he was just like 2 to 3% more accurate, man, he could have really set some records at Auburn.
Yeah, probably. I wished he had gotten a better chance in the NFL. Honestly, I don't know that he would have. He probably is not an NFL caliber starting quarterback, but he's someone like I think he would thrive in today's NFL that is more allowing for the rushing type of quarterback.
Right.
With someone who, like, if you look at like a Tannehill right now, right, like a guy who's been allowed to develop into the position, I think Nick Marshall could. Or what's the kid's name in Buffalo? Josh Allen. Josh Allen's a bigger guy, but still. Anyway, we're not talking about the NFL. What we are talking about is Auburn football, and we thank all of you all who have been tuning into the broadcast. Listen, we want to grow the channel, so you guys have to continue to share the stuff that we're putting out here. Let somebody else know about the War Report. Make this a family thing when we come in here on Saturdays, particularly. But make sure you guys check us out on the Wednesday night show as well. Again, we're going to be on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. As always, click like and subscribe on the channel if you are our YouTube follower. We want to get those YouTube numbers up. We are going to be continuing to put out content on Twitter and Instagram, so make sure you're following us there. And, of course, we are TW Report on TikTok, man. So thank you all very much for continuing to stick in with us, and we will continue to bring you all great content. We'll be here Wednesday previewing the Mississippi State game. Until then, and as always, War Eagle.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.